What is up, 2K crew? Yes, your eyes are not deceiving you. We are back, and I do want to reach out to the YouTube crew and the crew over on the podcast side. We have been gone for a couple weeks. We had some unexpected technology failures, if you want to call it like that. But basically, my MacBook took a shit, so had to wait on getting this lovely piece of machinery. Which I'll move this. My new Mac Mini. The new Mac Mini, so a little bit of an unexpected purchase, but nonetheless, I'm super excited to see what this can do over my MacBook. So keep tuned in because you're going to see a sneak peek of some of the stuff we got going on, like the countdown timer that we just saw, which I kept screwing with, so it kept resetting to 10 minutes. So for those of you, I do apologize. Next time, it will go off at the right time. So 2Ks. It's good to see you again, brother.
It's good to be back. Good to be back.
Yeah, and your little guy is doing much better.
Yes. Yep.
Much better. Yeah, last week we tried to, or the previous week we tried to get you in on the horn, and part of the technological difficulties wasn't letting you come through, so that's why we didn't have the show 2 weeks ago. And then last week I was going to go solo, and we've been doing this live for so long that doing it recording just kind of took the wind out of my sails. And normally, I'm a very self-driven person, and I can get it going with the best of them. But I was just like, that, and what we're covering today is what I was going to cover. Going to cover last week anyway. And with something like this, that's kind of debatable, it's usually always good to have someone to bounce back and forth with. So I just kind of said, you know what, let's save it. Table it, push it back to next week. So for those of you that do not know, and this is your first time, go ahead and drop us a comment in the comment box, or especially if you're watching the live, and I will feature you on the screen like this here. And if you guys don't know, fans of the show, we call the 2K crew, and if you go over to facebook.com/groups/2K crew, you can get in there. And 2Ks, we're almost at 350 people in the group.
Yeah.
Almost 350 people, which is super awesome. And on top of that, I'm pretty sure that we've reached over 5,000 total downloads the whole time we've been doing this, which is pretty cool. And what's even cooler to me is that it's not just our most recent shows that are getting the majority of the views or downloads. I mean, there's still people picking up at week one and following us through the whole thing. So if you guys are on anywhere you get your podcast material, go ahead and follow us. Don't subscribe, because people think that subscriptions cost money. But it is always free to not only join the 2K crew, but to subscribe, do all that stuff, because that means the world to us. And like I said, if you guys have any questions, comments, want to tell us we're completely out of sorts with the draft grades we're going to give, or go over with some of these teams, go ahead, because that's one of the cool parts about the show. And you have found the Turbo and 2K show. All right. So 2Ks, let's get into it. Let's start off as we always do with the box score, where we did a lot of this. We talked about following and subscribing, but there's something else too. If you guys are feeling really generous, and we will feature you on the show, is go to buyturboabeer.com, and there's a new feature on buyturboabeer.com. Even if you buy one beer, I've been putting kind of like blogs up there every week, and something that's kind of come along, I don't think we've talked about on the show yet, which is the local newspaper here in Marcellus. I'm the sports columnist now. So every week I submit an article, and if you want to get in on the early, usually it's about a week early, go to buyturbobeer.com. That shoots you to our Buy Me a Coffee site, and every week when I submit them, I put them up there too, so you get an advanced preview, and I send it out to everyone that is one of our supporters. So if you're looking for that, I mean, I think I submitted my third one Tuesday, and so far they've all been about baseball, but the first one was talking about is Mike Trout getting kind of like the Michael Jordan treatment as far as the MVPs are concerned, and I kind of break down he deserves more than the 3 that he has. So give that one a read. And then this week, with the news that the Angels had kind of cut base with Pujols, where does he go? Kind of bringing his career up to this point, and kind of drawing some very similar comparisons between him and our beloved Miguel Cabrera. So go ahead and check that out. But let's get into probably the reason you all are here, and the title of the mother effing show is, oops, there we go, NFL Draft Recap. Now, 2Ks, I think it doesn't go without saying that this draft was exciting and confusing all at the same time. You know, I don't know if it was just because there's probably more pre-draft trades than we've seen. And when I say pre-draft, I mean not when they're on the clock. I mean, hell, San Francisco traded up weeks in advance.
Yeah.
You know, and kind of the first pick was already set in stone from the get-go. You know, that was the Jags had their eye on Trevor Lawrence, and they had been putting together a playbook with him, you know, weeks in advance. So that who was the number 1 pick was very anticlimactic. But
I think we all knew who the number 1 pick was at the end of last year's draft.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I mean, that's something that, I mean, even I'd probably say that most of the recent drafts, we kind of know who's going number 1. I mean, that kind of goes without saying. But, you know, even if you go back to the Reggie Bush draft, there was a lot. Most everyone going into the season thought he was going number 1. So, but Mario Williams was taken prior to him. So things can happen. But this one, going into it, we pretty much knew who number 1 was. We pretty much knew who number 2 was. The wild card was going to be San Francisco at 3, and I mean, they mortgaged a lot to go from what I think it was 12 to 3. I mean, it was like, 3 first rounders, a third rounder. Yeah. I mean, you're putting a lot of eggs in that basket. And to kind of start off the confusing point is, I did not expect Trey Lance to go 3. I really didn't. And the reason being, and I'll kind of give you my thoughts on it, and then I'll toss it over to you, is to go that high and to mortgage that much of your future on a guy you don't have a whole lot of tape on. And on top of that, and I'm not downplaying North Dakota State by any means, but what did we really see? What did he play, like 14 games total? And 2 last year? So, like I said, I'm San Francisco must have seen, and Kyle Shanahan must have seen something that they really liked with this kid. But on the other hand, you saw a lot of Mac Jones. You saw a lot of Justin Fields. And pretty much all those dudes did was win. So, and that, if you kind of compare those two, they're two totally different. I mean, Mac Jones is mobile, but he's not nearly, whereas Justin Fields is more of that Kyler Murray type, elusive with speed, whereas, let's face it, Mac Jones is more towards that Peyton Manning elusive speed. But, yeah, did not see Trey Lance. And like I said, that's not anything discounting him, but wow, what a move. Yeah. So, what are your thoughts?
No, I mean, I agree with you as far as we haven't really had the chance to see a lot of him. Obviously, they didn't have the season last year, so we weren't able to see him play this last season. But as far as I think it's what we're kind of seeing with the NFL as a whole, with quarterbacks now coming in, is they want these dual threat guys. They want these guys that have the big arms, but then like a Patrick Mahomes can make the plays with their feet. And I'm not saying that they have to run like Kyler Murray or anything like that, but they're able to make the plays like Patrick Mahomes can, where he can get kind of like the Aaron Rodgers of the past, where it seemed like Rodgers had the big arm and he was accurate, but then when there was a big play and he needed to get that 9-10 yards to pick up a first down, he could do that. And for him, going into the situation of being with Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco, that's what I love about it the most, and that's why I think that there's a good chance that he could be the number one quarterback in this draft class going out of it, just because he's going into a system where, let's not forget, this team was in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. We know how good of a defense they have. We know how good of an offensive line and a running game that they have. Yeah. The question has been the playmakers at receiver, which I think that they have that. Looking at Deebo Samuel, looking at Brandon Ayuk, the rookie from last year. So they got the weapons there, and now it's just a matter of. I mean, I've been ripping on Garoppolo for a couple of years now, and he's not the guy. He's not a starting quarterback that's going to lead you to, to win Super Bowls. I get it that he got them there, but he didn't. I mean, they weren't able to even compete in that game really.
No. Unfortunately, and on the defensive side of the ball, I mean, let's remember that San Francisco team. One of the reasons they were where they were at 12. If you remember back, that team was decimated with injuries on both sides of the ball. Even starting with Jimmy G, and then Bosa, and they had a laundry list of players that seemed like from week 2 and 3 on that it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So, no, you're 100% right. The coaching staff is there. One of the big weapons that you left out was Kittle, one of the best tight ends in the league, and he was even dinged up throughout that year. So it's going to be interesting to see going forward. And this is one of the best parts about the draft is sitting here, talking about especially armchair quarterbacks and GMs like you and I, is it's not like we met the dudes. We didn't sit down with them. I know I didn't watch tape on these guys or anything like that. So we're just reacting to what we saw.
Yeah.
And I didn't watch any North Dakota State football. Did you?
No.
So.
But for me, I think just kind of looking at these top 3 picks, the one that questions me more is Zach Wilson.
Yeah.
Another guy that's BYU is not a powerhouse football program. It's not that they're playing against really good teams week in and out like some of these other guys. And then he's going to the Jets. And let's just be honest. I mean, the Jets have been a place where to ruin quarterbacks for years now.
Until Gary Vaynerchuk buys the Jets. It's pretty much where players go to die. Yeah. I mean, ask Le'Veon Bell.
And for years now, they've had basically, just hole after hole with receivers, and they don't have any threats, and they still don't.
No.
It's like they're not improving anywhere there. It seems like their defense is always serviceable for them, but let's just be honest, the Jets are a joke. And for Zach Wilson, who I have questions about him anyways, kind of looking at some tape of Trey Lance, I like Trey Lance better. It's a guy that we're going to talk about here pretty soon. Your boy there for the Bears. I liked him better than both of these kids. So let's. I mean, that to me that was the. That's the elephant in the room right now. Is the Bears had to do something. Had to do something. Andy Dalton is not a long-term solution. And there's been a lot of people that have hated Andy Dalton. I've rather liked him. However, you're not going to have him. They didn't sign him to be the quarterback for the next 5 years. No, and I mean it's not the Andy Dalton that we were watching 7-8 years ago.
No,
I mean can he still get the job done? Yes, but is he gonna lead you to playoff football and beyond that? Absolutely not.
No, and even taking that Bears team from last year that did make the playoffs. They did that with Nick Foles and Sexy Rexy. They're not Sexy Rexy. I think Rex probably would have done a better job than Mitch, but that team is prime. I mean, they've got Robinson on the outside. They got running backs coming out their ass. Mm-hmm. The defense is always. I mean, that's what Chicago Bears football is built on. But they haven't had a quarterback. Yes, you could say, and even as a Bears fan, I didn't mind Jay Cutler. I didn't mind him at all. And did he kind of wear out his welcome? Sure. Were the Smoking Jay Cutler website awesome? Absolutely, absolutely. But that is something that they had to do. And for them to get Fields at the pick that they did, I think was a steal. because you're 100% right. Zach Wilson is, I mean, if you look at his numbers from even the year previous compared to this last year, vast improvements. Vast improvements. Does he look the part? Yeah, he does. He does. But how proven is he? Getting back to the whole, him and Trey Lance are kind of in the same boat because who did they play? Who did they play? And for those of you that have followed us for any amount of time, especially during the football season, how many times do we say that the Big Ten just beats the hell out of each other? Top to bottom, the most complete conference in college football. So Justin Fields had that. I mean, did he every game throughout the season lights out? No. But what quarterback really does?
Yeah.
And hell, even the number 1 overall pick with Lawrence, he had some down games. So, and that's something too that we'll get into with Trey Lawrence, or not Trey Lawrence, but Trevor Lawrence. But no, I think every Bears fan just kind of had this big.
I think
finally,
in my opinion, it was the best pick of the entire first round of this draft. I mean, when you talk about the Bears, the first thing you think about with the draft is the Khalil Mack trade. You've basically given up 2 years of first round picks because of that. And so basically, for the last 2 years of these drafts, the Bears they've been non-existent in those, for a first round pick. And then when the first year that they actually do get back in there and have a first round pick, and then they get up even higher because they make this trade to jump up. And I think they landed the best quarterback in the draft. I really do. I know everybody wants to say Trevor Lawrence, and Trevor Lawrence is the safe bet. He's the safe guy to go to. But I think the most talented quarterback in this draft is Justin Fields.
Yes. And then another huge thing that jumped out to me was a question. How does the Patriots and Belichick do this? How? I mean, there were so many analysts saying that they're going to have to trade up if they want Mac Jones. They're going to have to trade up to this pick. They're going to have to trade up to, even the Dolphins were sitting there, and there's a lot of folks that are like, the Dolphins are going to trade back, because if they see Tua as their quarterback for the future, and obviously they do, but we didn't see a whole lot of trades up there that I think most folks were like, because there's a lot of folks that said, are the Falcons going to take a quarterback or are they going to trade back? And, the Falcons probably got the best athlete in the whole draft.
Probably the best player. Yeah. The best all-around player, playmaker. And Matt Ryan's, for years, has loved a tight end. So
sure.
I love this pick. And
sure. And, I remember going back in, fantasy football is, I used to love getting Austin Hooper because you're right. I mean, that was Matt Ryan's thing for a long time. But Patriots, I think, were pick 15, I think. And, yep, their boy Mac Jones just lands right in their lap. Right in their lap. And for those of you that are subscribed to the YouTube channel, the one that I did a video on this. And it's obviously with that pick, you have the who starts week 1 now, Cam Newton or your new toy, Mac Jones. And in my mind, this is an easy fucking decision.
Yeah.
Easy. Cam sits his ass on the bench.
I agree with you. And this Mac Jones, I don't know what to think about him yet. Obviously, out of all these kids, quarterbacks, I probably watched him and Trevor Lawrence the most. But man, something tells me that these wide receivers that he had at Alabama are better than the wide receivers and the playmakers that he has on this Patriots team.
Oh, 100%.
And so and that's what worries me with them is they have a pretty good running game. I mean, Belichick, it seems like, always does has that running game there, but what have scared me, and even in the last season with Brady being there, is the playmakers. And then you take Edelman out of that now, and he's gone. And he was the only guy that you had that was any bit consistent, and he's gone now. So, and those days of don't get me wrong, Belichick, probably the best NFL coach of all time.
Yep.
But they have made a living, especially when Brady was there, of guys coming in and signing these 1 year, 2 year deals to chase rings and go for it. And Brady's not there anymore, and I don't think that there's going to be.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to really live the Belichick and the Patriot lifestyle
Without
anymore.
Brady.
Without Brady, it was you could make it worth your time because you basically could chalk it up that you were going to be playing for at least an opportunity at the Super Bowl just by signing that contract and going and playing for that team. Mm-hmm. But with Brady not being there anymore, I don't know how many people are actually going to want to sign on.
Yeah, what's the draw?
And play on that. I mean, and we kind of, I mean, I don't know if this is the reason, but a lot of these guys kind of opting out last year. Mm-hmm. Were they opting out because of, obviously we were in a pandemic and I get that, but maybe some of it was because Brady wasn't there.
Yeah, how much ambition would you have to go beat yourself up when Brady's not there? And to further your point, look how many dudes have taken discounts to go to the Bucs now.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I mean, and what's scary about the Bucs is they brought all 22 starters back, which is unheard of. Which is unheard of. So that, in my eyes, this is a, like you and I were talking last night. Will the Patriots have packages for Cam? Sure, sure. Why not? He's the best short yardage running back in the league. You need that 4th and 1. He's huge.
Yeah.
You're on the goal line. He's huge. Yeah, there's no doubt in my mind. And to be honest with you, that was his only bright side for his first year in New England. And is he a serviceable backup? Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, one would think that bringing in a young kid like Mac Jones is Cam the best vet to sit behind him and groom him and teach him and all this? I don't think so. I don't think so. But
they're two total different
100%
quarterbacks.
Yeah.
I mean, you got one guy that is limited. All he can basically do is sit in that pocket and throw. And then you have another guy that is also limited because he cannot sit in that pocket and throw. He has to get out and make plays with his feet or make plays where he's throwing the ball downfield when he's out of the pocket and running.
Yeah.
And so no, I don't see that working out.
No.
In my opinion, I think Mac Jones should be the guy there and just roll with him. And then obviously, when you have somebody like Cam Newton, goal line packages are obviously going to be available. Big, third down situations where you might need a yard or two. Yeah, then Cam Newton is given he's going to get a yard or two every single time he touches the ball. Yeah,
because he's bigger than the linebackers that are trying to tackle him. And yeah, that to me that's a no-brainer. That's a no-brainer. And if you followed the show any amount of time, you know that I respect Bill Belichick and what he does, but do I think do I like the Patriots? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Same thing with Tom Brady. I respect what he does. Do I like him? Is he one of my favorite players? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But let me see here. We talked about the Bears a little bit. Obviously, Justin Fields.
Yeah, and last thing I'm going to say about the Bears, that Bears pick and why I love it so much is they got, like I said, in my opinion, they got the best quarterback in the draft. And then you think about that division.
Yeah.
You got the Lions in there. We know what they are. And the Vikings with Kirk Cousins, I don't see them as, being much of a threat. So then you have Green Bay, who, they have been one of the best teams in the NFL over the last couple of years. But what's going on with Aaron Rodgers now? So there's the question there. So that's why. Who knows if Aaron Rodgers is going to be the starting quarterback in Green Bay come week 1?
I don't even know if Aaron Rodgers knows that.
Yeah, so that's why I love it. Like the Bears, I think that they kind of saw some blood in the water and they went all for it. And it would not shock me if they're a team that's going to be winning that division this year.
Yeah, and some more picks from the Bears. Excuse me. They've desperately needed offensive line help, and then the next 2 picks after Fields were offensive linemen. And they got a running back, a wide receiver, a corner, and a D tackle. That's kind of rounded out their draft. And this was the GM Ryan Pace there. This was pretty much his shit or get off the pot. And I think his opportunity to shit was highly received by Bear Nation. That is for sure. Let's move on from there, and let me find Something that hits a little closer to home here are Detroit Lions. They during the offseason probably had one of the more active off seasons that we've seen with the Lions. Obviously, the big quarterback trade with the Rams, and it's going to be odd to see Stafford in another uniform. But I think the Rams got the better end of that pick or that trade. In my opinion, I would much rather have Stafford over Goff any day. But and all the grades and everything 2K crew that I'm going to be reading off to you are from sportingnews.com. So if you want to, the article is, let me get to the title here. It is NFL Grades 2021. All 32 draft classes ranked from best, the Dolphins, to the worst Raiders. So if you want to get in and follow along, that's where I'm pulling all this info from, and to give them props because we're using it. So Sporting News has the Lions grade an A-, and to me, this was one of those where every pick seemed to make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Seemed to make sense, and for those of you that do go on buyturbobeer.com, I did misspeak because my second article was addressing or kind of giving my grade for the Lions pick. So you can read all about that and more at buyturbobeer.com. But they took the offensive tackle out of Oregon, and I'm pretty sure it was hands down this dude was the best offensive lineman in the draft, and it's Penei Sewell, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. And the one thing I can guarantee with this draft is the announcers, whoever does the Lions games, you're going to get, I mean, these are names you're going to have to practice. You're going to have to practice. And because Sewell's probably one of the easier ones to pronounce. And that was a solid pick. It addressed a need that they've been, because let's be honest, that offensive line for Detroit has sucked, even going back to Barry Sanders. So to actually not overreach or trade up to get a player that it really didn't feel that great of a need. I thought every pick that they did, very very thought out, they got a lot of value in every pick. And then after Sewell, they went D tackle, corner, which we can all, especially with some of the recent trades here, that defense is getting kind of picked apart. And if Aaron Rodgers stays in Green Bay, he's kind of owned the Lions. Mm-hmm. With Justin Fields now in Chicago, you're going to have someone. You're going to have a defense that's going to be able to keep up with these. And then Kirk Cousins is Kirk Cousins, So, and then they went corner, wide receiver, which the wide receiver was Amon-Ra St. Brown out of USC, and this kid's legit. Yeah. I mean, as a Notre Dame fan, we aside from last year, that's USC is one of our rivals. That's a team that I usually keep a close eye on. And going back to his brother was a receiver for Notre Dame and is currently I'm pretty sure he's still on the Packers roster, even though he's been kind of riddled with injuries to start his career. But obviously some good pedigree there. And then they went linebacker and then running back. So was it sexy? No. But it was functional.
Oh yeah, I mean, you think about for Jared Goff being the new guy on the block there, the new starting quarterback in Detroit. Obviously, the first thing that you would want is a new one of these top receivers in the draft. But I think that Detroit probably would have looked at that if Jamar Chase was still on the board.
Sure.
They probably would have looked a lot closer at him. But once he goes to the Bengals there at 5, I think you're looking at the board and you see this offensive tackle who, from day one, is probably going to step in and be your starting left tackle for
10 years.
Yeah, because I think he's already better than Taylor Decker, who's there now. Mm-hmm. I think he'll slide over to right tackle now. This guy will be there, and So you got that, and then like you said, with the St. Brown pick, I mean he's a guy that a lot of people had coming off the board in round 2, round 3, and to be able to get him in round 4, a top tier receiver, because that's what they needed. I mean they lost Galladay, so they don't have him anymore. That was a huge loss, but like you said, this is not by any means a sexy draft for the Lions, but I think it's a very good draft for him.
Yeah, and in getting kind of piggybacking off that sexiness. Let me find him here. All right. I know this is thrilling content watching me scroll through this, but since we're going down here, and speaking of 4th round picks, Ian Book, my boy, I didn't expect him to get drafted. And to be honest with you, I think he wound up in the best spot possible for him at the Saints. So, not to say he's going to step in and kind of take over where Drew Brees left off, but if anyone can coach a quarterback, it's Sean Payton. So, but 2Ks, let's talk about your boys, the Dallas Cowboys. And like you and I were talking about before we went live, was when I was researching and when I was trying to find the site that I wanted for these draft grades, the grades for the Bears were pretty solid across the board. For the Lions were solid across the board. One of the major movers and players in these in comparing these websites was the Cowboys. Some analysts had them really high, some had them really low, and the Sporting News has them at a C-. And in my opinion, that's way too low. I was actually proud of Jerry Jones for not doing something stupid and trading up to get any offensive help right out the gate. Because if you watched any Cowboys games last year, yes, part of it you can kind of throw out because Dak was injured, but the Dak Prescott injury had nothing to do with that defense being absolutely atrocious. So I think because they traded back and were still able to get Micah Parsons from Penn State, and kind of that linebacking core is really solid to start out with.
But they can't be they're not healthy. Yeah. That's the problem.
And Lee retiring, which healthy, he's probably the best out of the 3. And we're talking about Lee, Van Der Esch, and Jalen Smith. So to add this dude in the mix where they got him, I thought was a great value pick. Addressed a need, and he was probably the best linebacker in the draft. So to give them a C-, I thought, and maybe this website's biased a little bit, because like I said, it wasn't sexy. It wasn't sexy because after Parsons, they went cornerback out of Kentucky, Kelvin Joseph, D tackle from UCLA, an edge rusher from Iowa, which that Golston kid is legit, and corner from Oregon State, linebacker from LSU. Then they decided, okay, let's see if we can't revive this offensive line a little bit, and went offensive tackle from Marshall. Then they go wide receiver from Stanford. And then they go back to the defense and a tackle, a corner, and then a guard with their last pick. And in my opinion, if you get any offensive lineman from the Big Ten, you're going to get a run-blocking machine. So to have your last pick be a guard from Nebraska, Matt Farnook, have I heard of him? Nope. But like I said, anytime you get an offensive lineman from the Big Ten, they're going to be able to run block, because that's what the Big Ten does.
Yeah. No, I was really happy with this draft. Obviously, Micah Parsons, he's the best defensive player in this draft, and I think he's one of the guys that didn't play last season. He with the COVID thing, he decided that he wasn't going to play. Maybe that was the reason. Maybe the reason was he already knew he was going to be a first round pick. Who knows? But if he plays last year, I think he's a top 5 pick in this draft. I think because of him not playing in the college season, that was the reason why he was moved back to the Cowboys, being able to get him at number 12. And I think that the thing I like about him is they can kind of play him everywhere, and I think that's what they'll do is he'll be like a hybrid where sometimes he's going to be a linebacker, sometimes he's going to line up on the edge. The speed that he has is He steps in where one of the faster linebackers in all of the NFL right off the bat. So I love that part about him. As far as the two defensive backs that they drafted, Kelvin Joseph and Nashawn Wright, I don't know much about them other than they're big. Mm-hmm. They get 6'3", 6'4", corners.
Those are huge
And
corners.
when you look back at a few years ago, where with the Seahawks and the Legion of Boom and Dan Quinn being the defensive coordinator there, and Dan Quinn now being the defensive coordinator in Dallas, he likes those guys with the size and the who are physical and can press receivers on the line. And so to me, they addressed everything that they needed to do. Their defense last year was fucking horrible.
Horrible.
Micah Parsons from day one, probably going to be the most talented linebacker in that linebacking room from day one.
Which says a lot considering that the players we just listed.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And then the big physical defensive backs, I like that. Defensive line was terrible last year. They couldn't stop the run. They couldn't stop anything. They couldn't get pressure on the quarterbacks. So they drafted two guys to play the middle of the defensive line, and they also drafted a couple edge rushers. So yeah, it's not there's not besides Micah Parsons, there's not any big time names that we know that pops off in this, and that's what you're kind of used to with Dallas Cowboy drafts. Is there's normally that big name or two big name guys that come from big name schools. Well, they didn't necessarily do that in this draft, and maybe that's why, they're getting knocked down a little bit. But
yeah, and
I love it. They did exactly what they needed to do.
And in my opinion, how can you give Dallas a grade of a C- when you give the Lions an A-? And to me, their drafts are very similar. But the article goes on to say the Cowboys deserve points for addressing defense early and often, as they also didn't forget to get some depth for wide receiver, which to me they have probably one of the most talented they should have one of the most talented wide receiving cores, and offensive line along the way. The problem is Parson and Cox were the two best picks for the team that already invested a ton in linebacker, for better or worse. There are plenty of lingering questions about the defensive backs and front four for Jerry Jones and Mike McCarthy after making some reaches and not getting good value starting in the first round. To me, that is total bullshit. Total bullshit. It was even, every analyst on ESPN was saying that Parsons was their guy. Mm-hmm. And when they can trade back and still get him, how is that not a good value?
Yeah.
And for all the other dudes, in my opinion, none of them were reaches.
No. And even going back to last year's draft, where a lot of people want to say, did they really need CeeDee Lamb? CeeDee Lamb's going to be the best wide receiver there in Dallas. If he's not the best receiver this year, which I think last year he was probably the number 2 guy there in a lot of games, but towards the end of the season was kind of making that, the bid to be the guy there.
And just wait till he gets to catch balls from Dak.
Yeah. So I think he's the best. I think he's the best wide receiver that they have in the room right now, and I think for years to come he's going to be that guy. So. Yeah, I don't see the reaching thing or anything like that.
No.
How do you like I said, Micah Parsons was, in my opinion, if he played in the college season last year, he would have been drafted in the top 5 of this draft. Mm-hmm. And
I 100% agree.
And
100%.
So how are you reaching for that? You got him at number 12. I just don't agree with it.
No, like I said, I'm right there with you, and like I said, that when I was trying to figure out which one of these articles I wanted to feature here, this was probably one of the lowest grades that someone gave the Cowboys. I mean, most of them were kind of in that B range, but yeah, I can agree with that. I can agree with that. All right, well, 2Ks, I think we kind of wrapped up every, we did my team, we did your team, we did the local team. So let's go into some winners and losers. And I'll kind of go over. I'll go down the list, give you the grade, and then I'll ask you if you agree or disagree, and we'll kind of go from there. So, again, everything's coming from SportingNews.com. They have the Miami Dolphins with a grade of A, so they have them ranked number 1. Kind of some highlights. Obviously, they stay put, take Jalen Waddle, which. This was one of kind of the head scratchers for me, but pairing him back up with Tua, if you're gonna get your quarterback a new toy, you might as well get him one that he's used to, and it has some chemistry with. And if I'm not mistaken, this is going to be kind of a reoccurring theme here, where we're going to see ex-college teammates, especially on the offensive side, get paired back together. And they got an edge rusher, one of my offensive linemen from Notre Dame, which Eichenberg was kind of a steal where they got him. I kind of expected him to go a little higher. Tight end from Boston College, another offensive lineman, and the running back from Cincinnati. And I was very high on the Dolphins draft. In my opinion, they didn't. I don't know if I'd put them at number 1 per se. But do you agree with the high mark here for the Dolphins, 2K?
Yeah, it's hard to argue it, and it's hard to. I mean, really, when you're talking about the Dolphins here in these last couple drafts, it's with all the draft revenue that they've had, it's kind of hard to fuck that up. Mm-hmm. And so with so many first, second round picks that they've had because of some of these trades,
do it all the time, though.
Yes, but so yeah, I agree with you. I think it's hard to argue that they didn't have the best draft out of every team.
And this team isn't too far. Even, obviously Tua didn't have the breakout season that I think a lot of us thought he was going to, like a Justin Herbert. And even if Burrow stays healthy, I think his stats would have far surpassed Herbert's. But Tua was kind of like that. He's coming off the hip injury. How is he? Is he going to be extremely healthy? How mobile is he going to be? There were a lot of question marks. And if you look at the other, obviously Cincinnati had the number 1 pick for a reason, but Tua really didn't have that great of a supporting staff. So now we're seeing, beefing up on the offensive line, getting him some toys, and they're obviously going all in on Tua, which I don't blame him. You drafted him high last year, mm-hmm. So you might as well provide in. Let's be honest, even if he isn't the guy moving forward, the more weapons you're going to have, the better chance you're going to land a free agent, mm-hmm. or if you do happen to slide back in the draft and one of these, the quarterbacks here in the next couple of years are available, you're putting that kid in a better spot. So all in all, yes, couldn't agree more. Sporting News has the second team is the Minnesota Vikings with a grade of A. Their first round pick, they went offensive tackle Christian Darrisaw, and then kind of oddly taking Kellen Mond, which is Texas A&M quarterback. I didn't expect him to go this high, to be honest with you. If you watch any A&M football, dude has probably an upside just as big as the top 4 quarterbacks that were taken. But in my opinion, he's a little bit more of a project. Mm-hmm. A little bit more of a project, which it's not like Cousins sucks. It's not like you're seeing a decrease in his performance mm-hmm. because of age. So is Cousins worth the money that you paid him? Probably not. Mm-hmm. Probably not. But you can't go back and fix that now. No. Can't go back and fix that now. But if you're a young quarterback like Mond that is kind of more of a project, I think Cousins is a good guy to learn from. Mm-hmm. I really do. So, and they have a ton of picks here.
Well, why Minnesota, it seems like they are like the team as far as trading back and adding draft revenue, sure. And they do this year in and year out.
Them and the Patriots.
And I think that they got exactly who they wanted in Darrisaw, the offensive lineman, mm-hmm. and they were able to trade back and gain nothing but a couple third-round picks and fourth-round picks and then still ended up getting their guy. And then as far as the Kellen Mond, I mean, like you said, obviously I fucking hate Michigan State, so I don't have a whole lot of good to say about Cousins, but he's mediocre. He's mediocre.
He's serviceable.
But serviceable does not win Super Bowls. No. And do I think that he is the guy that could take a back seat and work under a young kid? Not saying that Kellen Mond is going to be the guy, but I think he's going to have the opportunity to take that. Yeah. And I think that he could play that role and be pretty good at it. I really do. I I don't think that that Cousins has that, the ego of where he can't sit back and take a back seat. Yeah.
You like that?
So, yeah, I think it possibly could work. But, yeah, and then the Vikings, it seems like every year they are rolling like 18 new bodies out of the draft. And, and a lot of them you don't even know who the fuck they are, but it seems to always work for them.
Yeah, and they follow that pickup with probably the top 5 linebackers, in Surratt out of North Carolina. They go offensive line help again from Ohio State, DN from Pittsburgh, Iowa State running back. Because even as talented as Dalvin Cook is, can he stay healthy? And that's been one of the knocks on him his whole entire career. No one doubts how great he is, but can he stay healthy? So that, to me, that was a great insurance pickup. Where did I leave off? A safety from Cal, Florida State edge rusher, wide receiver from Iowa, and then a tight end from Central Missouri, and a D tackle from Pittsburgh. And was it sexy? Nope. But did it fill a lot of voids? Yes. And let's be honest, the NFC North, if Rodgers isn't there, is totally open, 100% open. So I think the Bears are kind of positioning themselves, like you said, to kind of take over that crown, even if Aaron Rodgers comes back. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. And team right behind them is the Cleveland Browns. The Browns fans, what? The dog pound, what? Kurt Handenberg, what? And I have them with a grade of A as well. And another historical thing that happened was Northwestern had 2 players drafted in the first round, and if memory serves me correctly, the stat that they read, Northwestern had in the past 32 seasons has had a combined 2 first round picks. So and we've talked at great lengths about how we love that program over there at Northwestern. So it's not, to me, I think you're going to see more and more Northwestern players being taken in the first round. So definitely not it's not going to be an oddity any longer. They took the corner Greg Newsome from Northwestern, followed up with, to me, probably one of the, and I'm not saying this just because I'm an Irish fan, but the linebacker, Owusu I always suck saying his name. We'll just call him JOK for now. There's a lot of people that said he was a first round pick, and to slide to the second round,
late second round.
Yes. I think it was a very, very. I mean, it's probably ended up being one of the steals of the draft, and I think I think the days of us ripping on the Browns for being shitty I think they're over.
Yeah, I mean, the Browns are kind of similar to what Miami's done in the last 3 or 4 years. It's where it seems like their draft grade for the last 3 or 4 years has been an A. They just keep on killing it in the draft. Obviously getting, pretty high picks in the draft until this year for Cleveland. I mean, they're towards the end of the draft because they're
That's what happens when you make the playoffs and actually win a playoff game.
And they're arguably one of the most talented teams in the NFL.
They're scary.
From both sides of the ball.
And they I think obviously the gamble, because in my opinion, when they drafted Mayfield, was a gamble. Was he a winner at Oklahoma? Sure. Does he have a fiery personality and a great leader? Absolutely. But to me, that was, looking back at it, was not a stretch. He's proved a lot of folks wrong in his winning games. And yeah, dog pound, you should be. I agree with the grade of an A. I agree with it 100%.
Yeah, the only thing there is not a player in the NFL right now that has more pressure on him than Baker Mayfield. I mean, you have
he kind of puts a lot of that on himself.
He does,
too.
But the Browns have done nothing but just add talent after talent for him since the day that they drafted him. They went all out with him on both sides of the ball, offense and defense. So there's a lot of pressure on him and to perform, and
even the dogs are excited. Yep. But no, I totally agree. And then Bears are right after that. I mean, we kind of went over that. They gave them an A, and to The one I was kind of shocked on this list was the New York Jets at number 5. They gave them an A. And they went, obviously, we've covered Zach Wilson with the number 2 overall pick. Then they went a guard from USC, a receiver from Ole Miss, probably one of the more talented running backs in Michael Carter out of North Carolina. Safety from Auburn, a safety from Duke, corner from Pitt, safety from Florida State, a corner from Kentucky, and a defensive tackle from Arkansas. So as you can see, they had a pretty good mix of, I mean, it was for the most part a defensive heavy draft for the Jets, but
First 4 picks were offensive players, though.
Yep. But when you are the Jets and you have that many holes, you can't fix everything in one draft. You can't. What you can do is kind of getting back to what we said was make yourself relevant so you can sign free agents. People actually want to go to New York and play. And, obviously going forward, we're going to have to see how Zach Wilson kind of, and that was another big thing, was going from BYU to the biggest media market in the world in New York. And, Jets fans can be kind of ruthless. So let's see how he handles that. Right behind them at number 6 is our, we kind of touched base a little bit on this, the 49ers. They took Trey Lance. They took the other, one of the other Notre Dame offensive linemen, Aaron Banks. Trey Sermon from Ohio State to even add more depth to that running back crew. And Sermon was a beast. He was kind of dinged up throughout the year last year, but man, overall, dude's a beast. He's a beast. Boy out of Michigan, corner safety Aubrey Thomas. Western Michigan guard Jalen Moore. Corner out of Oregon, safety out of USC, not UFC. He's not fighting. And a running back out of Louisiana. So they added 2 running backs. And in the Sporting News here is very high on Trey Lance. It says that most of this grade is tied to the smart, aggressive trade up for Lance's unlimited upside in Kyle Shanahan's offense as a big-time passer and runner with high football intelligence. Banks and Moore boost their interior blocking, while John Lynch found excellent safety values for the future in Thomas and Hufanga. And so obviously I think the Sporting News is a little bit higher on Trey Lance than I am, but overall, I mean, they just judging from this list, I think they got great value out of where they got the guys that they wanted. So, and number 7, the Buffalo Bills, gave them an A-. And as we saw last year, this team didn't have many holes. They went the edge rusher out of Miami, Gregory Rousseau, and just kind of looking over this, they took one of my favorite players, the Wisconsin corner, Rashad Wildgoose. I mean, if that's not a name that belongs in Buffalo, fight me, because that, for one, the dude's legit. Second of all, with a name like that, he gotta be legit. So they have
their second round pick defensive end is Boogie Basham.
I love it. Tampa comes in at 8 with an A-. You're talking about a team that doesn't have a whole lot of holes. This is obviously one of them. But they went Joe Tryon, the edge rusher out of Washington. This was a sneaky. I was wondering where is I was higher on Kyle Trask than a lot of people. When you can light up SEC defenses like that, that says something. A couple games that they lost, and kind of, because there's a lot of folks that were saying they should be, they should have been that the number 4 team in the playoff, and not Notre Dame, had they not had a couple hiccups that weren't his fault. A dude threw a shoe and got ejected, and But after, and I think we say this every year, but Brady's not going to be there forever. Mm-hmm. It seems like he's going to be, but yeah, Trask. I think any quarterback that can sit behind Brady.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and to get him where they did.
And it sounded like Brady wanted him.
Yeah.
It sounded like Brady wanted him to be there and to work under him for a couple more years. The question is, how long is Brady going to play? Like, because now it's like, I think there's been so many doubters, and he just keeps on winning. Mm-hmm. And I think with the mentality that he has, like, he just wants to prove people wrong. He's been wanting to prove people wrong since the day he was drafted.
Yep.
And you can take that a step further and say when he stepped foot on campus at Michigan. Mm-hmm. And to me, like, if he can stay healthy and he can stay
50?
upright,
play until he's 50.
Yeah, I honestly think it's a possibility with him. Like, to me, how many times have people try to write him off?
Me, a bunch of times.
And he just keeps on making doubters. I mean, and just proving his doubters wrong.
Makes me look like a moron every time.
And it's like, I sit back and I just kind of laugh because obviously I've been a huge Brady fan forever. I mean, I hated the Patriots, but it was like, okay, I'm always going to root for Brady because he's the Michigan guy. But I just sit back all the time and I'm like, why do these people do this? Why do they doubt him? Why do they feel like... I can remember going back 8-9 years ago, people were arguing with me saying that Peyton Manning was better. And I was like, you guys are fucking idiots. You guys are fucking idiots. And now, you look into the future where we're at now, they are fucking idiots. Like, there's not even a discussion. And then people, he left and he goes to Tampa, and people are like, oh, he's done. And after the first 5-6 weeks of the season, they're like, he is done. He can't even throw the football anymore. And I'm just sitting back like, you guys are fucking idiots. Like, this is what's going to make people doubting him and people talking about him and saying that he can't do it anymore is what makes him even better.
Sure.
And, like, so... It seems like you haters would get smart and be like, Tampa's going to win the Super Bowl next year. Mark my words, Brady's going to win the fucking MVP. Like, start saying stuff like that, and maybe...
If I do that, I'll start jinxing him. So
that's what I'm saying.
Maybe I'll have to...
He feeds off his doubters, so I don't understand why all of his doubters have never just bought into him. Like,
no, and in my defense, I did the same thing with Kobe forever. And I've done a couple videos on how I was dumb and not and didn't appreciate Kobe while he was still playing. So definitely kind of turned I stopped saying that Tom is old and brittle and can't throw the ball anymore because obviously, I mean, he fucking lit up the Super Bowl. So well, we already talked about the Lions, so we'll talk about the Falcons, and then we'll go to the bottom and kind of see where they trash some of these draft grades. The Falcons got an A-. They stayed put, like I said, and took Kyle Pitts. Where both of us are I think not just both of us, a lot of folks are high on him. And they took safety out of TCU, Richie Grant, Michigan, offensive tackle, Jalen Mayfield, San Diego State corner, Darren Hall, a corner from Stanford, D tackle from Texas, one of my boys a DN from Notre Dame, Boise State corner, and a wide receiver out of Arizona State. So, big question here is Julio going to be with the team? That's probably one of the major question marks going forward here. But very solid draft, very solid. Met a lot of their needs, and let's face it, that offense wasn't the reason they were losing. But when you have a talent in Kyle Pitts, who probably the most talented tight end that I've ever seen. Mm-hmm. You can line him up everywhere. And also is a great blocker, too. So definitely not something that you see.
And athletic enough to line up as a wideout. I mean, there's
even a slot guy.
Yeah, the things that they're going to be able to do with him are
unlimited. Yeah, unlimited. Touch base a little bit on the Bengals because this was another. Let's. They took Lamar Chase or Jamar Chase, excuse me. offensive, because there was a lot of folks that were saying that might be where Sewell went, was the Bengals to keep Burrow upright, because I'm sure none of us have forgot the last time we saw him. His knee was exploded, and they ended up later in the draft taking your Michigan running back, Chris Evans. So all in all, they gave him a B+, but they did address the offensive tackle spot, which is something that they absolutely needed. Because, it's kind of hard to throw the ball when you're Joe Burrow when you're on your ass. So let's kind of cruise to the bottom of this list here. And we already touched base on your Cowboys because for whatever reason they have them the second worst draft. But let's talk about the worst draft. The Las Vegas Raiders, which still seems weird to say. They drafted their first round pick was an offensive tackle out of Alabama, which historically you'd be like, how in the hell did you get a grade of a D when you draft an offensive tackle from Alabama? But Alex Leatherwood's his name, and even watching the draft took everyone by surprise, and most everyone thought this dude was a third round pick, not a first round pick. Then they followed that up with a safety out of TCU, linebacker out of Buffalo, a safety out of Virginia Tech, Missouri safety, corner from Illinois, and a center from Pittsburgh. So not a lot of... The one thing that kind of, yes, they reached for Leatherwood, I'll give them that, but historically the Raiders have been that team that trade up and just do something really dumb. They get a fast receiver. They do this. They do that. But in recent drafts, it seemed like they've gotten out of that. We need a shiny toy, and they've kind of tried to at least make this team. And with Gruden there, maybe Gruden sees something that none of us do. But like we said, that Leatherwood was projected at a third round pick, not midway in the second or in the first, excuse me. So that I don't get. And we'll kind of go. We already talked about the Cowboys. The Seahawks coming in with a grade of C-. And the Seahawks were one of the teams that did not have a first round pick. So I think, it says right here, with the fewest picks of any team, only 3. It's more of an incomplete grade for Pete Carroll and the GM. Unfortunately, they end up taking the wide receiver out of Western, Dwayne Eskridge. It says wasn't the right pick to upgrade receiver as a redundancy and skill set with Tyler Lockett. There's nothing that really stands out about Brown and Forsyth as late rounders. They got a corner out of Oklahoma and an offensive tackle out of Florida. So very, not lackluster. And as it's been well documented here, as well as every other sports talk place, is Russell Wilson was on the trade market, wasn't on the trade market. Who the hell knows? The Bears put together a hell of a package to try to get him, and if that wasn't going to land him, there was no way that he was going to be traded. So yes, I know with the limited amount of picks, did they really make things better for Russell Wilson? Yeah, we'll have to see. Excuse me. But we'll do one more here. Let's see who we got here. Excuse me. Let's do the Arizona Cardinals, because they had probably one of the more active free agent classes. I mean, anytime you can get J.J. Watt to roll in, that's a huge thing. But they went linebacker out of Tulsa, wide receiver out of Purdue, Florida corner, edge rusher out of Duke, corner out of UCF, safety out of Cincinnati, and a center or guard from Penn State. So, it says the Cardinals tend to be on a roller coaster drafting with GM Steve Keim. Consider this a dip year. Edge rusher and cornerback were the biggest needs to put on the and were put on the back burner early, and Arizona didn't address the interior offensive line until the last pick. Collins was a redundant first rounder to 2020's Isaiah Simmons and more of a superfluous luxury pick for the team with plenty of wide receiver, even with Larry Fitzgerald mulling over retirement. So,
yeah. I do like that that Moore pick from Purdue, though. That kid is fucking fast, man.
Very underrated.
Yeah, and his size is what's going to get him, because I think he's listed at like 5'7" or 5'8", but he has that, the speed and the burst of like a Tyreek Hill, of just being able to get and go, and then match that up with probably the most athletic quarterback in the NFL in Kyler Murray. And I mean, excitement's not going to be a question on that offense, that's for sure.
No. And Arizona's defense has always been good. Always been good. So,
and they got somebody more consistent as far as for a running back in James Conner, if you can keep him upright and keep him healthy. Sure. I think Arizona is going to be a pretty good football team. I think they were right there borderline last year, being able to pass that hump and get themselves in there. The problem is they play in a very tough division.
Yes. So, like I said, we're not going to go through every team. That's kind of some of the highlights. And, yeah. Oh, excuse me. 2K, so it's pretty good timing because we're about at that little over the hour mark. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on as far as the draft was concerned? Anything that jumped out at you? What was your... Like I said, some of the picks confused me. But all in all, it was a lot of the players were back in the studio and were able to, give big fist bumps to the commish.
That was nice. That was nice to see. It just was more normal. As far as the draft, though, for me, it was a little bit of a lot of guys I just didn't really know. I think it was the season just being kind of delayed, shortened. Some teams not playing, some guys not playing, some guys holding. I mean, so it was just I think kind of went into this draft kind of underprepared. I didn't really know a lot of these. Obviously, first round picks, I know pretty much all those guys, but you get into later rounds and you're kind of following. I've always been one to follow what guys I want for Dallas and where I feel like they can get them. Other than Micah Parsons, I really didn't know anybody else that they took. So I just kind of go by the position and the needs and what they needed, but as far, knowing any of the players, Micah Parsons, he's the only one I know.
And not to bag on your other team in Michigan, but not a very Michigan-laden draft as well. So that was one of the things that when I started doing, the show prep for this was Notre Dame had a lot of guys drafted.
A lot of guys, yeah.
None in the first round, obviously. But as far as depth is concerned, I think they had, because let's be honest, Alabama gets more players drafted every year than any college. But it just kind of goes to show you how good of a season Notre Dame had when all of these players are getting drafted. And there was still two more that have signed free agent or signed as free agents with teams, because I just saw the other day that all of the Irish guys actually got their numbers. And Mr. Book is chosen 16. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, talking about going back to Michigan, the one pick that I really paid attention to, first round, Kwity Paye going to the Colts. I love that pick for him. He doesn't
have to move far.
Yeah, doesn't have to go far. Hands down, was the most talented player on that defense. It was a defense that was not good. I mean, you can't. There's no way to work around it. They were a terrible defense last year, but not anything to do with Kwity Paye. I think he was a first round talent, and now he gets to match up with a guy like DeForest Buckner, who I think is one of the best in the business, and to learn from somebody like that, I think that. Kwity Paye just has the size, he has the speed, the athleticism to be very good and step foot to one of the best defenses, young defenses in the entire NFL, the Colts.
All right, and the Colts are another good story that obviously a lot of folks are going to be paying attention to, with the Carson Wentz coming over and Phillip Rivers retiring, and what's it going to be like year two for our boy JT. in that offense. How are they going to work with Carson Wentz as opposed to Phillip Rivers? So, and that Colts team is super young, and they just got younger. And you're right, that was a very good pick for them, because Pay could have been on anyone's draft board and helped them out, regardless of what team. So, but yeah, that was, like I said, all in all, was especially the first round was rather exciting. We did see, I don't think overall we didn't see as many in-draft trades as I think a lot of analysts were expecting, but pair of the ones that did happen with there was one other team I wanted to talk about. Please hold. But just kind of see how some of these teams in divisions like the NFC North are, even if Rodgers stays, the Bears got better, the Lions got better, the Vikings got better. The Packers really didn't make a whole lot of noise in the draft. So, but the one team that I did want to, and this is a big shout out to, I did tell Ben that we would talk about his Steelers. And the Steelers caught a lot of slack in this draft. Oddly enough, this was one of those teams that, like the Cowboys, had the draft grades were all over the board. And with Sporting News, they gave him a B+. Gave him a B+. First, they took pretty much, there was 2 running backs taken in the first round. Najee Harris, arguably probably the best.
I think as far as when we start talking about fantasy football and the fantasy football draft, the rookie,
he's high on my
the
board.
Rookie running back to nab in that draft, who I think there's a strong possibility that he's going to be a first round pick.
Oh yeah,
in fantasy drafts this year, just because of where he's going. I mean, Pittsburgh.
And he can
do both. He can run the ball and he can catch the ball in the back.
He might be a better receiver than he is a running back, which is saying something. And as we saw against Notre Dame, can jump over an entire dude.
Yeah.
And so
there's a lot of similarities there to him and Le'Veon Bell.
Yeah.
And we know what Le'Veon did as far as for fantasy teams.
How many years was he the number 1 pick?
Yeah.
And for good reason.
Yep.
For good reason. And kind of getting back to the Pittsburgh thing was, if I'm not mistaken, they had the lowest rush per yard out of anyone in the NFL. So it was definitely a need. But you could say that there were a lot of holes in this team. And after Najee, they took a tight end from Penn State. Nope. That was Penn State tight end, guard or offensive lineman from Illinois, offensive tackle from Texas A&M, linebacker from Texas A&M, a D tackle from Wisconsin. His name is Isaiah Loudermilk, so we're gonna have some milk in the Ketchup Stadium. And edge rusher from Miami, a corner from Oklahoma, and a punter from Georgia Tech. So I was actually, I think when you're drawing the comparisons between Harris and Le'Veon, you can't help but notice the similarities. What made Le'Veon Bell such a threat was not only his patience before he hit a hole, but his ability to catch the ball out of the backfield or even line him up as a wideout. And we saw Alabama do that with Najee all the time. So kind of getting back to that old school feel for the Steelers, but getting back to like we talked with Brady, how much longer is Ben going to be able to do this? And I think what saves Ben is he is a bigger quarterback, but then again he's bigger, so it takes harder hits to get him down. So did they address any of that? No. They got him some help on the line because even their Villanueva's not there anymore. He seems like he's been with Ben forever. So, and again, that's a division that is getting stronger and stronger, and the Steelers don't have that stranglehold on it any longer. Just looking at the other quarterbacks in that division, we've already talked about Baker. We haven't even talked about Lamar Jackson yet. Mm-hmm. So to me, it's going to be harder for them to stack up and keep, because let's be honest, in the past probably 15 years, that division's been owned by the Steelers and the Ravens. So you're going to see, everyone else is making noise. How are you making noise? And like I said, they filled some needs, but I think the overall, the biggest monkey in the room, out of any room in Pittsburgh, is how long is Ben going to be able to do this? How long is he going to be able to do it? So there you are, Mr. Fisher. We did talk about your Steelers. I almost forgot, but I didn't. So with that being said, I don't have anything left. I think I just want to give a big thank you, and like I said, we apologize for the last couple weeks, but don't worry. We're not going anywhere. Just took a little pause, that's all. Just took a little pause. And that's why I had no problem kind of going over a little bit today, because we got fans to please, 2Ks. Mm-hmm. We've got fans to please. All right, well, if there's nothing else, 2Ks, let's say our goodbyes, and we'll talk to them next week. All right, 2K crew, have a fantastic week. Looks like the weather's breaking. Summer might actually start getting here. You never know.
That'd be nice.
But, you guys be safe, have fun, enjoy your week, and as always, Jim Rome, we're coming for you.